Well, good morning. Today is Monday, the 18th of March, and today we are in 2 Samuel chapter 19. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 15. Word of God says, "It was told Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard that day, the king is grieving for his son. And the people stole into the city that day, as people steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life and the lives of your sons and your daughters and the lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you and hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." Then the king arose and took his seat in the gate. And the people were all told, "Behold, the king is sitting in the gate." And all the people came before the king. Now Israel had fled, every man to his own home. And all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king delivers us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines. And now he has fled out of the land from Absalom. But Absalom, whom he appointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing but bringing the king back?" And King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. "Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house, when the word of all Israel has come to the king? You are my brothers. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not bone to my bone and my flesh? God, do so to me, and more also, if you are not commander of my army from now on in place of Joab." And he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, "Return both you and all your servant." So the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring the king over the Jordan. So, obviously, this is historical narrative, and so you read a newspaper clipping of what's going on from that time here, and then you try to understand what's the spiritual lesson in this account, in this story. What's the spiritual lesson, and how does it apply to me? Well, kind of sum things up here. After David killed Uriah and the baby of Bathsheba passed away, Nathan the prophet came to David and Told him that story about the rich man who had many flocks and the poor man who had one little ewe lamb. And David was enraged, and Nathan said, "You're the man." And by the word of Nathan the prophet, God told David that he was going to spare his life, but that the sword would never leave his home, would never leave his household. And that's what we read on Friday. And since then, his son Absalom tried to pull a coup. He chased David from the throne. David has to flee for his life, and David's faithful servants stood and fought against Absalom. And in the process, Absalom catches his long hair in the branch of a tree, and as he's riding by on a horse, and he gets caught hanging from the branch, and Joab comes along and cuts off his head, kills him. So the coup is put down, and instead of grieving or being thankful to the people for fighting for him and preserving his throne, David's here grieving over Absalom, his son, who tried to kill him. Joab goes in and rebukes the king. Said, "Look, you're showing everybody that if we would have all died in battle and Absalom would have lived, you'd have been happy." He said, "You need to get your act together, David." So David goes back, cleans himself up, goes out to the gate of the city, and he tells his servants to come on back. I'm your king, and basically tries to make things right, but things aren't right. This whole thing's just a big mess. So what are the lessons we can learn from this account, and what are some observations we can have that maybe we can draw some spiritual application for ourselves? Well, if we apply the specs and ask the questions, maybe it'll help us get some understanding of what is happening here. First of all, is there any sin to forsake? Well, is it a sin for David to be grieving over Absalom, his son? No, but should he be thankful for the people who've died in fighting to preserve his throne? Yes. So what is his sin here? His sin is he shows a lack of gratitude for those who have fought to preserve his throne. He's failing as a king. But if you just try to put yourself in David's place, I mean, it's a really difficult position he's in, right? But the bottom line is he failed as a father. And that's the sin here that really just stands out to me. See, the whole reason this mess has come to be from the beginning is because as a father, as a king, as the head of the home, instead of leading like he ought to, and he's committing adultery and murder, and all those character flaws are being passed down to his children. And Joab makes the point. If Absalom would have won the battle, David would be dead, and so would all of David's other children, because Absalom would have killed them. We talked about that with Mephibosheth a few days back, that it was common practice in that day when a king was deposed from his throne that all of his offspring were put to death, so that there would be no heir to that throne. Absalom would have killed Solomon. And so David's failure as a father is the big sin here. What about principles to apply or promises to claim? Well, as we read this account, read the story, the principle that stands out to me is that, God had a purpose, because it's through Solomon that the seed of Abraham was passed down. Christ comes from the lineage of Solomon. So we see God's sovereignty preserving that line by eliminating the threat to Solomon. How crazy of a story is it that Absalom had long hair and he's riding his horse through the woods and he gets his hair caught on a limb and is just left helpless hanging there, so that his demise will come because of that. The principle here is the sovereignty of God to work out his plan and protect his chosen people. What about examples to learn from? Well, we see here the example of David. He's saying, "Oh, Absalom, Absalom, my son Absalom." And I'm sure he loved his son. But I think some of this is guilt, because he knows that he failed his son. He failed as a father. And because he failed as a father, his son Absalom is dead. And that's the tragedy. So let's learn from his example and determine to live our life for God and pass down a godly heritage to our children. Is there a command in this passage? I don't see one that applies to us, but going back to that line, that lineage of Solomon and how God preserved that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for the sovereign power of God that is able to bring about his will and preserve his plan, despite every effort of the devil to thwart it. And so for that, I'm thankful today. Well, that's my insight. Maybe you got something else out of this passage, but that's all I have for today. Hope you have a blessed day, and we will see you again tomorrow.